The year was 1846. A rider gallops through the dusty streets of Washington, D.C., clutching urgent dispatches from the southern border. American blood had been spilled on American soil, or so President James K. Polk would soon tell Congress. But was it really American soil? The answer to that question would spark one of the most transformative conflicts in North American history, the Mexican-American War. Good day, history enthusiasts. Today's story is one of ambition, manifest destiny, and the reshaping of a continent. It's a tale that would redraw the map of North America forever, leaving an indelible mark on both the United States and Mexico that echoes into the present day. The seeds of conflict were planted long before the first shots rang out. In 1821, Mexico had won its independence from Spain, inheriting a vast territory that stretched from present-day Oregon to Guatemala. But holding on to such an enormous empire proved challenging, especially in the sparsely populated northern regions. Meanwhile, American settlers, driven by dreams of new opportunities and fertile land, began streaming into Mexican Texas. These newcomers brought their American customs, language, and laws with them. More importantly, they brought their slaves, a practice Mexico had abolished. Tensions simmered as two distinct cultures collided in the Texas borderlands. By 1835, these tensions erupted into open rebellion, as Texan settlers declared their independence from Mexico. The battle cry "Remember the Alamo" still stirs emotions today. This simple mission-turned-fortress became the symbol of Texan resistance when Mexican General Santa Anna's forces laid siege to it in 1836. All 189 defenders, including legends like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie, fought to the death. Their sacrifice became a rallying cry for the Texan cause. Just 6 weeks later, Sam Houston led the Texan army to a stunning victory at San Jacinto, capturing Santa Anna himself and securing Texas independence. But Mexico never officially recognized the Republic of Texas, considering it a rebellious province that would eventually return to the fold. Enter James K. Polk, elected president in 1844 on a platform of territorial expansion. Polk believed in manifest destiny, the idea that American civilization should spread across the continent. The annexation of Texas in 1845 was just the beginning of his grand vision. Mexico had warned that annexing Texas would mean war. Yet Polk pressed forward, sending diplomat John Slidell to Mexico City with an offer to buy California and settle the Texas border dispute. The Mexican government refused to even meet with him. Polk needed another way to achieve his goals. The president ordered General Zachary Taylor to lead an army into the disputed territory between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande, land claimed by both Texas and Mexico. It was a provocative move, essentially daring Mexico to strike first. On April 25, 1846, Mexican cavalry attacked an American patrol in the contested zone, killing 11 soldiers. Polk had his jasus belly. American blood has been shed on American soil, he declared to Congress, conveniently overlooking the questionable nature of that claim. Congress declared war, though not without opposition. A young congressman named Abraham Lincoln demanded to know the exact spot where American blood had been shed. His questions went unanswered. The war that followed would showcase American military might while exposing Mexican political weakness. The United States launched a three-pronged invasion. Taylor pushed south from Texas, Stephen Kearny led a force west to capture New Mexico and California, and Winfield Scott executed a bold amphibious landing at Veracruz, marching inland to capture Mexico City itself. The American army was smaller but better equipped and trained. Many of the officers who would later face each other in the Civil War cut their teeth in Mexico. Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee, and Thomas "Stonewall" Jackson all served with distinction. Grant would later call it one of the most unjust wars ever waged by a stronger against a weaker nation. The war unveiled tactical innovations that would revolutionize military science. Artillery played a crucial role, with light, mobile guns providing crucial support to infantry attacks. The Telegraph Corps kept commanders informed of developments, marking one of the first uses of electronic communication in warfare. But behind the glory of victory lay the brutal reality of war. Disease killed far more soldiers than combat. The occupation of Mexico City saw urban warfare at its ugliest, with street-by-street fighting and civilian casualties. American soldiers, many of whom had never left their home states, encountered a foreign culture they didn't understand and often didn't respect. Mexican forces fought bravely but were hampered by political instability and lack of resources. Santa Anna, returned from exile to lead the army, proved more adept at political maneuvering than military strategy. The Mexican army suffered from poor equipment, inadequate supplies, and inconsistent leadership. The war produced heroes on both sides. Los Niños Héroes, 6 teenage Mexican military cadets who died defending Chapultepec Castle, became symbols of Mexican patriotism and resistance. American Marine Corps tradition was born in the halls of Montezuma, as U.S. Marines stormed the palace in Mexico City. California's story during the war reads like an adventure novel. A small group of American settlers, supported by U.S. Navy Captain John C. Fremont, launched the Bear Flag Revolt, briefly establishing an independent California republic before U.S. forces arrived. The acquisition of California would prove momentous when gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill just days before the peace treaty was signed. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed in February 1848, transformed North America. Mexico ceded nearly half its territory to the United States, including California, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. The U.S. paid $15 million in compensation, a fraction of the territory's true value. For Mexico, the war's aftermath was traumatic. The loss of such vast territory created a national wound that has never fully healed. The conflict confirmed Mexico's status as a secondary power in North America, and sparked decades of political instability. The United States gained an empire but inherited new problems. The acquisition of so much territory reignited the slavery debate. Would these new lands be free or slave? The Compromise of 1850 temporarily settled the question, but the underlying tensions would eventually explode into civil war. The war's impact on Native American tribes was devastating. Many had maintained traditional lands and lifestyles under Mexican rule. Now they faced American expansion and forced relocation. The Comanche, Apache, and other tribes would resist for decades, but their way of life was irreversibly altered. Mexican Americans found themselves in a peculiar position after the war. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo guaranteed their rights as American citizens, but reality proved different. Many lost their lands to American settlers and faced discrimination despite their protected status. Their struggle for equal rights continues to this day. The conflict transformed American society in unexpected ways. Irish immigrants who had faced discrimination in the East found acceptance and opportunity in the army. Catholic soldiers, exposed to Mexican religious traditions, began questioning Protestant dominance in American culture. Women moved west in greater numbers, challenging traditional gender roles. Military innovations from the war influenced tactics for decades. The effectiveness of light artillery and mounted riflemen shaped military doctrine well into the Civil War. The war also highlighted the importance of logistics and supply lines in modern warfare. The war's environmental impact was significant. American settlers brought new agricultural practices to the Southwest, forever changing the landscape. The California Gold Rush, made possible by the war, led to widespread environmental destruction and the displacement of native peoples. Cultural exchange flourished, despite the conflict. American soldiers returned home with a taste for Mexican cuisine and customs. Spanish words entered American English. Mexican architectural styles influenced the American Southwest. The war created a unique borderland culture that exists to this day. Urban legends and folk tales from the war period persist. Stories of buried treasure left by retreating Mexican armies, tales of supernatural encounters on ancient battlefields, and legends of heroic acts on both sides became part of regional folklore. The war's economic impact reverberated across both nations. The United States gained valuable ports, mining regions, and agricultural lands. Mexico's economy, already struggling, took decades to recover from the loss of its northern territories. The conflict sparked a literary and artistic movement in both countries. American writers like Walt Whitman commented on the war's moral implications. Mexican artists created powerful works depicting the nation's loss and resistance. These cultural expressions help us understand the war's emotional impact on both societies. The war influenced international relations throughout the Americas. Other Latin American nations viewed the United States with increased suspicion, fearing they might meet Mexico's fate. This distrust influenced diplomatic relations well into the 20th century. Religious implications of the war were significant. Protestant Americans encountered Catholic Mexican culture, leading to both conflict and conversation. The role of military chaplains expanded, setting precedents for future conflicts. Religious justifications for territorial expansion became part of the national discourse. Scientific expeditions accompanied the army, collecting specimens and mapping unknown territories. These surveys provided valuable information about the Southwest's geology, flora, and fauna. The war significantly advanced American understanding of Western geography and natural resources. The conflict's impact on medicine was substantial. Army surgeons developed new treatments for tropical diseases and combat wounds. The need for organized medical care led to improvements in military hospitals and field medicine. The war's effect on transportation networks was lasting. Military roads became settler routes, then highways. Ports developed for military use became commercial centers. The need to supply armies spurred infrastructure development throughout the conquered territories. Archaeological evidence continues to reveal new aspects of the war. Battlefield excavations uncover details about soldiers' daily lives and military tactics. These discoveries help historians better understand the conflict's human dimension. The war's aftermath influenced American politics for generations. The Wilmot Proviso, which would have banned slavery in the conquered territories, sparked intense debate. Political careers were made and broken over positions on territorial expansion and slavery. Documents and artifacts from the war period provide fascinating glimpses into everyday life. Soldiers' letters reveal personal experiences of combat and occupation. Mexican administrative records show how communities adapted to American rule. These primary sources continue to yield new insights. Modern borders and immigration issues trace their roots to this conflict. The Rio Grande boundary, established by the treaty, remains contentious. Cross-border communities maintain connections despite political divisions. The war's legacy shapes contemporary debates about immigration and border security. The war transformed both nations' military institutions. The United States Army became more professional and better organized. Mexico's military underwent painful reforms, learning harsh lessons about the need for modernization and unity. Educational systems in both countries teach the war differently. American textbooks often minimize its controversial aspects, while Mexican schools emphasize national resistance and loss. These different perspectives show how historical memory shapes national identity. The war's impact on indigenous peoples extended beyond the immediate conflict. Treaty provisions regarding Native American raids were never effectively enforced. The war accelerated American expansion into tribal lands, leading to decades of additional conflicts. The role of women during the war period deserves special attention. Some followed the armies as camp followers or nurses. Others managed farms and businesses while men fought. Mexican women participated in resistance activities, showing remarkable courage under occupation. Technological advances during the war period were significant. Improved communication systems, transportation networks, and weapons all played crucial roles. These innovations would prove crucial in later conflicts, particularly the American Civil War. The war's effect on agriculture was transformative. American farming techniques spread throughout the conquered territories. Mexican crops and agricultural methods influenced American farming. The confluence of these traditions created unique regional farming practices. The war's impact on law and governance was profound. American common law met Spanish civil law in the conquered territories, creating unique legal hybrid systems. Property rights, water law, and civil administration all reflected this mixed heritage. Trade patterns shifted dramatically after the war. New commercial networks replaced traditional Mexican trading routes. American merchants established themselves in former Mexican territories. Economic integration proceeded despite political boundaries. The war influenced fashion and material culture. American soldiers adopted Mexican clothing styles suited to the climate. Mexican crafts and decorative arts found new markets in the United States. These cultural exchanges continue to influence regional styles. Language evolution in the borderlands accelerated during and after the war. Spanish and English mixed in new ways. Indigenous languages faced increased pressure. The linguistic landscape of the Southwest still reflects these historical processes. The war's impact on education was significant. American schools replaced Mexican institutions in the conquered territories. Some Mexican educational traditions survived, creating unique hybrid systems. These educational changes affected cultural transmission for generations. The conflict's influence on music and dance created lasting cultural fusions. Military bands introduced new musical styles. Traditional Mexican music influenced American frontier culture. These musical exchanges enriched both societies. Social hierarchies shifted dramatically in the conquered territories. Former Mexican elites adapted to American rule with varying success. New social classes emerged as economic patterns changed. These social transformations still influence regional society. The war's effect on religious practice was complex. Catholic institutions adapted to American Protestant dominance. Traditional indigenous religious practices faced new pressures. Religious syncretism increased in the borderlands. The war's environmental legacy continues to affect the region. Changes in land use altered ecosystems. Water rights established during this period still influence resource management. Environmental challenges cross modern political boundaries. Today, the Mexican-American War's legacy remains visible in countless ways. Modern borders, cultural practices, legal systems, and social attitudes all bear its imprint. Understanding this conflict helps us comprehend current issues between these neighboring nations. The war reminds us that historical events echo through generations. Its effects on territory, society, and culture continue to shape life in both countries. As we face contemporary challenges, the lessons and legacies of this pivotal conflict remain relevant. As the sun sets over the battlefields where American and Mexican soldiers once fought, their story serves as a testament to the complexity of human conflict and its lasting impact on nations and peoples. Their sacrifices, struggles, and eventual reconciliation offer lessons for our own time, as we continue to grapple with questions of power, justice, and coexistence in North America. The Mexican-American War wasn't just a military conflict, it was a crucible that forged modern North America. Its legacy lives on in our cities, our laws, our cultures, and our continuing dialogue about what it means to be American or Mexican. Understanding this war helps us understand ourselves, our neighbors, and the complex relationships that bind our nations together. Time has healed many wounds, but the war's lessons remain relevant. As we face new challenges in Mexican-American relations, the history of this conflict reminds us of the cost of war and the value of peace. It teaches us that borders are more than lines on maps, they're places where cultures meet, clash, and ultimately enrich each other. In the end, the Mexican-American War stands as a testament to the power of historical events to shape the future in ways their participants could never have imagined. Its story continues to unfold in the lives of millions of people on both sides of the border, a reminder that history is not just about the past, it's about who we are today and who we might become tomorrow.